Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into demystifying the world's oldest active religion. We are talking about a belief system with well over 1 billion followers that is so unbelievably ancient, the actual dates are, well, they're pretty controversial among scholars. But just to put it into a fun perspective for a second, this tradition is roughly the age of 36 Betty Whites, right? It is an incredibly rich, highly diverse, and honestly, sometimes deeply misunderstood worldview. So today, we're going to break the whole shebang down.
But hey, before we get completely lost in the cosmic stuff, let me ask you a very simple, very modern question. Does the whole concept of YOLO, you only live once, actually apply to Hindus? Well, let's dive right into the mindset of this massive ancient culture to figure out exactly why the answer to that question fundamentally changes how you might view your entire existence.
Okay, first things first, we really need to clarify our terms here. Because while most of the world says Hinduism, the actual practitioners themselves call it Sanātana Dharma. And that translates, roughly, to the eternal tradition. So you might be wondering, where exactly did the word Hindu come from? Well, it's basically the results of a giant geographic game of telephone. See, the ancient Sanskrit name for the Indus River is Sindhu. But ancient Persians living across that river had this habit of swapping their S's for H's, so Sindhu became Hindu. Later on, the Greeks came along, dropped the H, tacked on an Aya, and boom, you've got India. So the concepts of Hinduism and India are linguistically tied at the hip, but Sanātana Dharma, that is the true original name of the tradition.
Section 1, the soul and the universe. Let's start out by looking at the macro universe, and then we're going to zoom all the way down to the micro individual. This covers the first two core beliefs of Sanātana Dharma. On one side of the cosmic scale, you have Brahman. This is the universal soul. Think of it as a formless, genderless source of absolutely all reality. And Brahman isn't just hanging out in the universe, it is the literal material that makes up the universe. Now, on the flip side, you have the Atman. That is your immortal individual soul. The best way to picture this, think of Brahman as a vast, boundless ocean. Your Atman is just a tiny, single drop of water that's been temporarily propelled out of that ocean. You're separate for a little while, sure, but ultimately you're made of the exact same stuff. So that brings up a good question. If you are just a little drop of water flying through the air, what exactly governs your journey while you're separated?
Which brings us to Section 2, Karma, Time, and Texts. Let's map out beliefs 3 and 4. First step is karma. Now, we hear this word all the time, right? But here, it specifically means action. The actions your soul takes while kicking around in a body affect your society right now, and they actually dictate the kind of body your soul is going to inhabit next. When you die, your soul just moves into a new body in a process called transmigration or rebirth. So to answer our earlier question, no. Absolutely no way does YOLO apply here. You live many, many times. But the ultimate goal, step 4 on our list, is moksha. Moksha is the grand release from this endless cycle of life and death. You achieve it by fully realizing your oneness with Brahman, finally allowing your little drop of water to plunge back into the cosmic ocean. But how long does all of this take? Well, we're talking about truly massive scales here. Belief 6 is cyclical time. In this worldview, reality doesn't really have a strict start or end date. Instead, time operates in these incredibly vast repeating cycles. Every single cycle contains 4 ages, known as yugas, and together they total a whopping 4.32 million years. At the end of each cycle, declining human morality eventually leads to the total destruction of reality, only for the whole cycle to hit refresh and start over. And fun fact, Hindus believe we are currently sitting in the 4th and final yuga right now, called the Kali Yuga. So to navigate this massive million-year time frame, followers rely on belief number 5, sacred knowledge. Now, unlike Christianity or Islam, Hinduism is essentially a non-profit organization. There's no single founder, like Jesus or Muhammad, and there's no one single holy book. Instead, you've got an immense library of divinely revealed texts. We're talking the foundational 4 Vedas, the highly philosophical Upanishads, the encyclopedic Puranas, and these massive, action-packed epics. Just to give you an idea of the sheer scale we're dealing with, the epic poem, the Mahabharata, is roughly 5 times the length of the Bible. It is absolutely packed to the brim with drama, love, betrayal, and giant battles. Now, what is actually super interesting about these texts is just how unbelievably practical they can be. Take the Atharva Veda, for example. It isn't just high-level, floaty philosophy. It contains everyday charms, herbal medicine recipes, literally tips on making poison arrows, and yes, an actual curse against cursors. How amazing is that? It just shows that this ancient tradition was designed to address absolutely every single aspect of human life, from the grand cosmic mysteries down to the downright petty, everyday squabbles. But with all these different texts and gods and endless cycles of time, what holds the whole thing together? Well, that brings us to our seventh and arguably most crucial core belief. It's the cosmic glue for everything we've just talked about.
Section 3. The power of Dharma.
So, the absolutely crucial concept here is dharma. Now, dharma roughly translates to proper behavior or duty, but it goes way deeper than that. It's this profound idea that every animal, plant, and human has a highly specific role they have to follow to maintain balance in the universe. If everything follows its dharma, the universe runs like a well-oiled machine. But if they break from it, things go terribly, terribly wrong. So a lion's dharma is to eat antelope, a king's dharma is to rule well. And honestly, if you're engaging with this explainer right now, your temporary dharma is to soak up this knowledge. For humans, your specific dharma usually depends heavily on your age and your current position in life.
And get this, Dharma is so powerful that even the ultimate gods are completely bound by it. The Hindu trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, each have their own massive cosmic dharmas to uphold. Brahma has the dharma to create the universe. Vishnu's dharma is to preserve the world. And Shiva's duty, well, complete with a face-melting third eye, his dharma is to actually destroy the universe at the end of that 4.32 million year cycle, just so it can be renewed. They literally have to do their jobs to keep reality functioning.
Let's see how this builds into the concept of divine intervention. If the scales of good and evil start tipping way too far toward evil, the universe's dharma is in serious jeopardy. When that happens, gods like Vishnu literally descend to Earth as avatars to step in and fix things. Fun fact, the literal translation of the word avatar is descent. Sometimes Vishnu comes down as a giant boar to drag the earth out of the ocean, and other times he's born right here as a human, like Krishna or Rama, spending his entire avatar life actively restoring the balance of dharma. Okay, so we've covered some massive cosmic scales and ancient rules, but how does all of this translate into real, everyday human society today?
Section 4. The modern Hindu worldview. You really can't discuss the modern Hindu worldview without taking a totally objective look at the history of the caste system. Its evolution over time is super significant. Back in the ancient era, texts like the Gita described a system that was actually based on one's qualities and natural abilities. However, skip ahead to around the 5th century BC, and a document called the Laws of Manu was introduced. This essentially created incredibly rigid hierarchies. It strictly forbade any movement between castes and locked people in solely based on their birth. Historically, this led to severe oppression and the heartbreaking concept of untouchables. But today, in the modern era, we are seeing a major shift. Hindus mix freely in schools and business environments, and even those very traditional marriage norms strictly based on caste are actively changing.
To truly understand how this system originally functioned before those rigid rules took over, we can look back at the Rig Veda. It describes the four main castes as emerging directly from the parts of the cosmic god Purusha. You have the Brahmins, or priests, coming from the face, the Kshatriyas, the warriors, from the arms, the Vaishyas, the traders, from the thighs, and the Shudras, the manual laborers, from the feet. Now, originally, this structure was aimed at organizing society in a way where everyone could fulfill a specific dharma based on their natural abilities. The idea was to ensure all the different parts of the societal body work together in harmony. And the absolute non-negotiable necessity of following that given role, that is the central lesson of the incredibly famous Bhagavad Gita. In this epic, the great warrior Arjuna actually refuses to fight in a massive battle. He's conflicted. But the avatar Krishna steps in and reminds Arjuna that, as a member of the warrior caste, his explicit dharma is to fight against evil. The lesson there is crystal clear. Following your dharma is simply not optional, no matter how unpleasant it might be in the moment. And this deeply shapes how modern Hindus approach their daily duties, difficult decisions, and their responsibilities to their families and society today. But of course, actually staying on that path of dharma, yeah, it's not easy. While striving to escape the cycle of rebirth and finally achieve moksha, individuals have to navigate 6 very specific, everyday temptations. We're talking lust, anger, greed, unrealistic attachment, pride, and jealousy.
And you realize pretty quickly these aren't some abstract, floaty cosmic forces, right? They are incredibly practical, relatable, everyday emotional pitfalls. Overcoming these human emotions is considered just as important as reading the sacred texts or understanding those vast cycles of time.
No, I definitely don't want you to walk away thinking this worldview is purely about denying yourself and being miserable. Not at all. The tradition clearly outlines 4 main goals of a good life. Yes, dharma and moksha are definitely on that list. But right smack in the middle are artha, which is the pursuit of prosperity and building a good reputation, and kama, which is the pursuit of pleasure in both body and mind. Pursuing wealth, finding success, and experiencing pleasure is perfectly acceptable. In fact, it's actively encouraged, just as long as it's done while still upholding your dharma. So we've journeyed all the way from the vast, formless ocean of the universal soul down to the very daily duties and human desires of the individual. Sanātana Dharma offers this beautifully complex, layered framework that guides over 1 billion people right now, today. It essentially teaches that every single action, every single tiny drop of water truly matters to the balance of the entire universe. So I want to leave you with this final thought to reflect on as you go about your day. Knowing that you have a very specific role to play in the balance of absolutely everything around you, what is your dharma? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating tradition with me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.